Hi, hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering a spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHP plus 3. Those plus 3 spells are homebrew spells. We're at plus 1 at the moment. You can back in the playlist to find it. Today's spell is Mass Suggestion.
Forrest, you suggested that we should delete our account on July 17th, 2021. Well, Forrest, I have a suggestion for you. On July 17th, 2021, I suggest you start running.
6th level enchantment, casting time of 1 action, range of 60 feet, components verbal material, a snake's tongue, and either a bit of honeycomb or a drop of sweet oil. Duration, 24 hours. You suggest a course of activity limited to a sentence or two and magically influence up to 12 creatures of your choice that you can see within range, and that can hear and understand you. Creatures that can't be charmed are immune to this effect. The suggestion must be worded in such a manner as to make the course of action sound reasonable. Asking the creature to stab itself, throw itself onto a spear, immolate itself, or do other obviously harmful act automatically negates the effect of this spell. Each target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it pursues the course of action you describe to the best of its ability. The suggested course of action can continue for the entire duration. If the suggested activity can be completed in a shorter time, the spell ends when the subject finishes what it was asked to do. You can also specify conditions that will trigger a special activity during the duration. For example, you might suggest that a group of soldiers give all their money to the first beggar they meet. If the condition isn't met, the spell ends. The activity isn't performed. If you or any of your companions damage a creature affected by the spell ends for that creature. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a 7th level spell slot, the duration is 10 days. When you use an 8th level spell slot, the duration is 30 days. When you use a 9th level spell slot, the duration is a year and a day. So we've now we've got another case of bumping into an upgraded version of a previous spell that we haven't covered yet. So Mass Suggestion, not only is it affecting a lot of creatures, 12 creatures at 6th level, 2 for every level you're casting, that's pretty decent. 60-foot range as well, that can be quite the crowd. They do have to hear and understand you. But on top of all that, it's the duration of 24 hours without concentration. Depending on the wording you can get away with, that could be really good. So first off, the upcasting, I can actually see being worth it depending on the activity and the way you word it. Again, it's up to what you say. Do you need them to do an activity for 10 days or be prepared for something that's going to happen in 10 days? A 7th level spell slot will be worth it, even if you're just affecting a single target, if you need them to act a certain way. The issue is how often do you need 10 days specifically. Then 30 days, fine. A year and 1 day, you can get to funny levels of bestow curse levels of complex. Not necessarily it allows you to, that is heavily up to GM and DM interpretation on how far suggestion can go and what is considered the prompt of what you can suggest. Alright, so when it comes to suggestion in general, and one of the big arguments that I find for mass suggestion especially is, hey, I suggest you follow me for this duration. Or like, what was it? I suggest you follow me around for a day, or I suggest you take orders from me for a day. The fact you added that time limit stipulation that fits the duration, like 9th level, hey, I suggest you keep taking my orders for as long as possible. You just have to add that stipulation of, because the spell ends once they meet that objective. If you set a time limit to that objective, either longer than a duration, and yes, it will still end when the spell ends, but it won't end before. Now, will your GM or DM allow that? I don't know. This is one of the weird this is one of the weird situations where similar to illusion and other enchantment spells, it's really up to how best you can think of it, especially when it says a few sentences, or a sentence or two. Run-on sentences are a thing, not to mention because it's not concentration. If you do this over the course of days and multiple rests, and if you are upcasting, you could get a good number of people under this effect. I mean, think about it. If you're going by base rules of long rest and you're a high-level enchantment wizard, and you can cast a 9th level spell slot every day, that's 12 creatures every day. And if you can do the order variety of like, hey, take orders from me or this person for just continue doing this, or for 2 years, or whatever you want to go over the time limit with, that can be a lot of people. Now, it says you can't do anything obviously harmful. Keyword is obviously. Like, if you have a peasant and you say, hey, I suggest you go and fight that troll or that knight over there. We'll do a knight, or like a guard. Mercenary. Bandit. Do bandit. Go to a regular farmer. I suggest you go and fight that bandit. Because it's a fight and not, like, walking into a spike pit or just a hole of lava, is that obviously harmful? Is it based off the skill of the individual? So let's say if you suggest a knight to go and fight a bandit, it's more likely that the knight's going to win in that fight. So is that obviously harmful? Also, not to mention it's a single save. That adds to it. And while I'm talking about trying to break this to get the most utility out of it by having a just blank orders, that's the discussions I've had around suggestion and other charm-based spells is if you can set the stipulation of just taking further orders or following the commands of a certain creature. Like, if you set the initial command to take commands, it's like the wishing for more wishes from a genie. There's a reason that rule has to be implied in the genie wishes, is because that is the obvious answer to get the most out of it. The obvious suggestion to give is, I suggest you take more of my suggestions. And not even in the spell sense, but the order sense, or just the verbiage sense. Like, you kind of get what I mean? Having someone entirely under your influence for this time instead of giving them a single command that they're following. Now, how can you work that into one sentence or two? Specifically, it says or. Don't know why. Also, that's in parentheses. I'm going on about the general order, or trying to break it to getting the max use out of an individual under the effects of suggestion. Mass suggestion is the fact it has this longer time period that it can affect, and you can upcast it to last over a year, and it affects a good amount of targets within a 60-foot range. How to put it? In one of my games, there was a character that had cast Mass Suggestion and just said to run towards this blank country that was across the border. They were nowhere near the border, but it got 12 enemies to run off the battlefield. And they just kept running, because you can't have allies shake you out of this. The only thing that'll automatically break it is if the spellcaster or their allies damage you, and there's no repeat save until, or not even until, there's just no repeat save. It's either until the objective is completed, or the initial spell's duration is finished. So that 6th level Mass Suggestion, after 24 hours, yeah, they sure haven't reached the border of the country yet, but they'll stop running. But that doesn't matter. They've been running for 24 hours away from where they were needed. That's worth a 6th level spell slot. You just have to word it as not an indefinite, but a really long duration task. And that's how you get the most use out of this. Because yes, you can set, like with base suggestion, it might be worth doing something like just something simple. Like I suggest you hand over this weapon or sword. I've seen base suggestion used as disarming magical equipment or explosives or just like letting go of someone. For this one, because of its duration and how many creatures it can affect in the range, this is good for just getting people out of a fight in the shorthand. And then for long term, it's really up to, you can set up something to trigger long term if you want, if you need to. Like, hey, in a year or in a few months, you're going to heist this place, so might as well set a 9th level suggestion on this one person so the door will be open when you need it. But you don't need it to be that. You can this is another way of getting a thrall under you through enchantment. But that's if your DM or GM allows for that indefinite, not indefinite, but really long-term goal or trigger that will end the spell way too late compared to the actual spell's duration. This is a lot of babbling to say, like a lot of illusion enchantment spells, things with appearance. How do you take that interpretation of using Mass Suggestion for long-term thralls by just setting the suggestion as take orders? Yay, nay, no, yes, what do you suggest? Also, what various uses of suggestion that you have found, because it's open to just whatever sentences you say. It's not like Command where it's a single word. It's not like Charm Person where they're just buddied up with you. You can give out a specific few sentences. So mention those in the comments below. 9 out of 10. Just because you have to be clever with your wording so it's not 10 out of 10 automatically and they can still pass the initial save and it has no effect. You can't harm any of the targets. So if you have any of the long-term things and even if a great opportunity shows up to then damage someone, you can't do that. But depending on how far you can go with the commands, you can get a lot of things going. And the fact it's opened up at 6th level for 24 hours is not bad. Not bad. 12 targets. 9 out of 10.